Okay, hello everyone. We are so excited to have you here today. I am Jody Smith, the Director of Programs for the Mended Hearts Incorporated, and I am delighted to be presenting you this month's Visiting Vignette. And for those of you who aren't aware, every month we do a Visiting Vignette that allows you to have, this is our mini webinar with the patient perspective. So this is a 25-minute webinar. We will try to leave some time for questions and answers at the end. If you would like to type any questions you have in the Q&A box, that would be great. This also is being recorded and will be put on our YouTube channel and our website, so you'll be able to watch it again and again, and I think you'll enjoy it. I am delighted today to have Mr. Harry Abrams. He is one of our awesome leaders and visitors and does so many good things for the organization. And I am going to be talking to him today about AFib. I would like to also thank the BMS Pfizer Alliance for their generous educational grant that allows us to put on this particular visiting vignette on AFib for patients and families, and also to Women Heart for their partnership in raising awareness about AFib. We have been doing a bunch of different activities with Women Heart, and they have been absolutely wonderful in helping us do that. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen, and then we will get to the good stuff. Harry, first of all, thank you so much for being here today and allowing us to hear a different perspective about your journey with AFib. Could you tell us a little bit, let's start with a little bit of your story, just a brief introduction to how you got your diagnosis, your initial journey with AFib and how it started.
20 years ago, November 15th, I had a full-blown heart attack, the typical one that they show on TV where the person falls on the floor and starts sweating, etc. The ambulance came, took me to the hospital. Pretty much a week later, I came out of recovery. I don't even remember having the tubes taken out. I was that much out of it. My wife handled all that. So from that standpoint, I think we all realize what our caregivers provide us. Within a week of that, I was back in the hospital for 10 days with congestive heart failure as a diagnosis. So as to when I was diagnosed with AFib, I would say it was due to my cardiologist being attuned to what was going on with my heart, because I have muscular damage to my heart muscle itself. That in itself, from the interruption of the electrical signals between the ventricles, where we get our lub-dub sound from, if you will, they were really astute. I can't say anything. I'm lucky enough to be in Atlanta, where we've got some great teaching hospitals, etc. They noted it, and at that point, I got my first AICD, which stands for Automatic Implantable Cardioverter Defibrillator. I only have a 2-lead version, but I'm on my 3rd one. I get approximately 8 years out of one. They say 12, but mine operates on a pacemaking standpoint approximately 20% of the time. I have not had a fibrillation or defibrillation action yet, and I'm not really looking forward to having one, if you don't mind. It was only afterwards, because I had so many underlying complications, that it was only after I'd gotten off the morphine after 10 years that I really started to realize that I actually had AFib as part of the diagnosis, and which is why they initially installed the first AICD to begin with. And I have an inquisitive mind, so it was the kind of thing where I wanted to understand what they were doing, why they were doing it, and what the benefit to me was. Well, that also comes into part of Mended Hearts as far as the support aspect of it, because I've met a number of people who have had AFib who didn't know it. And they found out because they were driving along on the side of the road, stopped, went into a fire station. The firehouse did blood pressure work and said, "You're not leaving. You need to go to the hospital." So I think many of us are walking around, or many people are walking around with the propensity to have AFib and toss it off as well, I'm dizzy right now, a little blurred vision, but let me sit down for a minute and it'll resolve itself. I know in many instances, I did that in a couple of occasions. So mine is under control. It's under control because, number one, I've got a good set of doctors. I was lucky enough to find a cardiologist who's also an electrophysiologist. The electrophysiologist is the one who does the pacemaker defibs. They're very astute. He's very astute, follows me closely with the diagnosis of congestive heart failure. Then he said that at one point, going back a number of years now, he turned around and said, "Well, you're stable, but the next thing to do is to look at where you would possibly go from here." So I now also have a congestive heart failure doctor. There's a progression that occurs, and most of us are too slow on the uptake. I think women are much more attuned to saying something's not right and having it looked at. I know with most men, it's kind of the case where we can hear, but we don't listen sometimes. Well, we don't listen to our bodies and realize that, hey, there could be something potentially wrong here. On that basis, we should listen to our bodies more. We're all individuals. Everybody has a different aspect as far as what works for you or how you react to it. But you can't ignore what your body is telling you. And I think that was one of the biggest things at this point. And my wife and I are both very strong advocates to find out what's going on. You can't do self-diagnosis on this. No matter what commercial is running on TV about the latest and greatest things, it's not something that you can rely on because we're so different, and one size does not fit all. Jody?
Yeah. Well, I mean, you brought up a bunch of questions. I thought of a bunch of questions that I want to ask you when you were talking. One of them is, I know that AFib is often not diagnosed or underdiagnosed, and I'm just wondering, after you had your heart attack, then you are at a much higher risk for getting AFib. At that point, did someone talk to you about your risk of AFib, or did that come about later?
That was later, and I think it goes back to the fact that there have been so many advances in the 20 years that I've seen as far as how people approach it. I actually looked for a group at one point in time after my heart attack to speak with, and there really wasn't anything truly organized. So when the opportunity came along to become associated with Mended Hearts, I kind of had to be talked into it, which is all right, but you've got to continue, and giving back to the community is one thing I think people who do know me realize that I want to do something like that. So it's definitely a benefit where I can go in and talk to somebody and say, hey, you don't look any better in that blue hospital gown than I did.
Yeah, well, giving back and visiting, we have there was a study that showed that actually it improves the quality of life of the people who visit, not just the people who are visited. So I think you're absolutely right in the benefits of giving back and helping others, which is our motto. In terms of though, and so I think hopefully now more people, but I think surprisingly few are talking about AFib after someone has a heart attack or if someone's diagnosed with heart failure. And there are risk factors that people should know about with AFib for sure. And also, how can you talk a little bit about when someone has AFib, their risk of stroke is increased by 5 times. So have people talked to you about that, and how are you dealing with that? How are you being treated for that?
Yeah, that's something that's very regularly gone over with my cardiologist, and I also have a vascular surgeon. But there is a lot of differentiation between a thoracic, a cardiologist, and a vascular surgeon. So again, it behooves somebody to in particular make sure that they're asking the right questions. If they don't get a good answer, ask them again. If they don't get a good answer at that time, then it's okay to get a second or a third opinion. You're interviewing the medical professional as much as they are trying to come up with information for you, but they haven't gone through what you're going through.
Yeah.
And I think that's been shown to me by several of the presentations that we've had in our chapter meetings where a company or individuals with a company have presented information, and they say it's wonderful to be able to talk to somebody who's used that or has gone through that.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. So in terms of the treatments that you've had, and we have a question on this in the Q&A too.
Sure.
I know you talked about getting an ICD implantable defibrillator, and that is definitely one of the things that can help in certain cases of AFib. But what other treatment options did you look at? How did you make decisions, and what decisions did you make around treatment?
The thing on treatment, I think, in my case was the fact that I did have the heart attack. And with the scar tissue on the muscle itself, then my EF, ejection fraction, everybody should know their ejection fraction. A low ejection fraction is the reason I have the AICD. If you don't have a muscular damage to the heart muscle itself, then you're in a much better situation. But as Jody's mentioned, medications, I've been taking warfarin, Coumadin for 20 years. They've upgraded that, so I do regular once a week finger pricks and check my INR level, which is merely a measure of viscosity in your blood. And people say warfarin, and they talk about blood thinners. They're not blood thinners, they're anticoagulants. That means that the red blood cells don't stick to each other, they slide by each other. So that's when a clot forms, is when you either have cholesterol break off or you have sticky blood cells together to form the clot. So medication is one of the big ones, and there are several types of medications available. There are also means from what they're known as ablations, where they actually do shocks. There are also means where they can go in. But what we're dealing with is, I'll call it heart flutter. Your heart can go high as a tachycardia or low as a bradycardia. It's a flutter that causes the AFib. By modifying the ability of the heart to get into that condition, which can be done by ablations or actually by going in and surgically making little scar tissues on the heart muscle itself. And so there are a number of options available. Your doctor is probably going to go for the least invasive to begin with, which is obviously something that you should consider. Additionally, from the standpoint of reliability and safety of these, the percentages are extremely high as far as no complications with any of those treatments. So there are a number of steps to go through from in a scale almost, and they're going to try and do the least invasive, the least that's going to affect you. And most of them are at the point where it's really, you don't have to prep for anything. You just go in and they do it, which is good. There are other things as far as doing catheterizations and whatnot, which again, from the safety standpoint, are very quick, very reliable, and they're done on an outpatient basis. Even my last interchange of my AICD, I was surprised because the other two were all done as overnight stays in the hospital. This was done as an outpatient. But again, my cardiologist is also the electrophysiologist. He's aware of my INR. He knows what my EF looks like, ejection fraction looks like. And I've known him for 16, 17 years. So I'm very comfortable with you. You've got to be dealing with somebody you're comfortable with. And that's all part of your advocacy. And hopefully you've got a caregiver like I've been blessed with, who makes sure all my pills are lined up for the week.
Absolutely. And if you don't, you can get one of those little pill organizers, but it's much better to have a lovely caregiver who helps out with you. And, I think you bring up a lot of important issues. One is knowing what the different options are and what they do. And certainly the anticoagulants are very helpful in preventing stroke. And sometimes you have to work with a couple different ones to see what one is best for you. And then there are definitely some more, as Harry said, invasive procedures, which are the cardiac ablation, which is done via cardiac cath, which is usually a tube that they insert in the groin area up to the heart, and they try to change the pathway. They burn a little and try to change the pathway of whatever's going on. But and the maze procedure, which is making that scar tissue that you were talking about, Harry.
Correct.
So it is important to know all your options, and it sounds like you're very well versed in that. So that's a good empowered Mended Hearts patient for sure. What if you could go back to what do you feel like you would have, and then we'll go on to questions because you have a couple in the chat box, in the quick Q&A box. And if you have a question for Harry, please feel free to type it in. What surprised you, or what do you wish you had known ahead of time about AFib that you didn't know? Now that you're in this far in your journey, what do you wish you had known, and what is something that often people don't know that you think they should know about AFib?
When something feels wrong, it probably is wrong. And you shouldn't wait around. I was playing tennis 2 to 3 times a week, or at least twice a week. Olive oil, I was doing the olive oil thing, etc. I thought I was in good shape. I'd be out on the court though and essentially fall down. Well, I think I was in the early stage of PAD, but at that stage 20 years ago, peripheral artery disease wasn't talked about. I even went to a neurologist for it. I thought it was something with nerves. You can't self-diagnose, and you need to ask questions. And we're really in a great age for people who are having problems or saying, hey, what if? Because there are all kinds of solutions that are available today that even 5 years ago weren't available. So it's an ever evolving and industry, if you will, as far as the medical profession. But the procedures are so much up to date. I just came back, literally made it here after going to my vascular. And he's done wonders. I've been able to walk around now without using an ambulatory device for the last 15 years, which I've done. So with what he could do with specialized equipment, etc. We're in a good age. We're in a real good age, but don't hide it. And as I said before, men are more resistant to saying, "No, it'll pass. I'm all right," and maybe even not talking to their wives or girlfriends about that kind of thing. And I think women are much more open to saying, "It doesn't feel right. I'm a little dizzy, or why I've got something in my jawline or my arm," and they're more inclined, I believe, in going and asking questions or seeking assistance sooner than men.
Sadly, the more women will die of AFib than men, because part of the reason I think is people don't often say, well, you have anxiety, and they don't take their symptoms seriously. And the other thing is women's symptoms are often different than men's. So they're more likely to have fatigue or different symptoms and not recognize that fluttery feeling and just think, well, they're overtired. And so the sad reality of that situation is women are more likely to die of AFib than men. And yes, it seems like women are more willing to talk about it, but then when they do, often they're discounted. Like, so it's sadly that's it goes both ways, and so that's unfortunate. But one of the questions is, how did you recognize that you had AFib?
I've thought about that in preparation for this, and it's hard to say I knew I had AFib. One of the ways, literally, was looking at my health summary and saying, "Hey, they wrote AFib on it." Well, how come they put AFib on it? And then going back and looking at it, I went, well, I've got structural damage to my heart muscle. I've got CHF, and they all relate to sinus rhythms, which are the electrical impulses generating activity in the heart muscle. So that was something I looked up and said, okay, I'm inquisitive enough to want to know how it works. It's truly amazing. And there are some really good videos on the actions of the electrical system in the heart that are out on the web. And if you're interested, any of you are interested in that, I definitely encourage you to take a look at them, because you'll be fascinated by how quickly it occurs. I mean, every time it's a lub dub, that's top half and bottom half working. And when those don't work together and they start getting erratic, that's when you get AFib.
Yeah. And we did a webinar in partnership with Women Heart last week that's available on the YouTube, Mended Heart's YouTube channel and website too. So you want to watch that. That also has some information about AFib, but not, it doesn't have the cool videos on there. So I definitely would recommend, I think you're right, Harry, going to watch those. And you're the second person in 2 days that found out they had something by reading either their discharge instructions or their report. And it really concerns me to hear that, because hear that yesterday it was on chronic kidney disease. Someone didn't realize they had kidney disease till they read it in their discharge instructions. And I just wonder, do you have advice for patients who are listening today? And then we'll have to end. And I'll try to get the rest of the questions so we can get you to answer them, Harry, and maybe we can send it out to the whole group, because I know there's like 1 or 2 more questions up there. But what is your advice to people, like to patients, about, trying to learn more? How can we stop this from just being in the discharge instructions and you having to figure it out on your own? Like, that bothers me a little bit.
I think some of the things that I've seen Mended Hearts do over the course of the pandemic, as far as developing programs and systems to reach out to people. We're still in an age of where we need to take advantage of the technology that's available to us, and do that kind of outreach. Our chapter is doing Zoom monthly meetings because we've got such a wide area here in the Atlanta area that it's almost impossible for people to pay $4 a gallon for gas and then still take 4 4 hours out of their day to go to a meeting. We can do that by Zoom, but it's that kind of activity and being able to do programs like our monthly programs and things like this that say, hey, here's what's going on. And we actually had reached out to one of the sororities at one of the colleges here and had done a program for them. And that kind of thing fell to the wayside because of the pandemic. So that's something we're going to look at reinstituting, because it brings people who are in a functioning organization to reach out into their community and their family. So it's that kind of outreach that we want to continue to do. And you're right, Jody, I just soon keep people from joining our group, if you will, and saying, hey, you're a member. I don't really want you here, but you're a member now because you've gone through an event. The more information that we can get out, that's the best way. That's the best way.
Yeah, so if you're not a member, join Mended Hearts and follow us, because we have all sorts of great information. Well, Harry, you've been phenomenal, and I just want to thank you so much. And I want to tell all of you, if you would like to get more involved or become a member or become an accredited visitor and give peer support to other patients or family members or caregivers, please go to www.mendedhearts.org and check us out, because we, like Harry said, we have some pretty good stuff on the website. And also we have ways for you to give back and help others as well. And again, we'll put the recording up, and we will try to answer some of your questions that are in Q&A that we didn't get to as well. Thank you again, Harry. You're awesome.
Well, thank you. And if I'll take another instance, this is the kind of thing that we're providing to patients in the hospitals. And this kind of thing, I can't tell you how glad they are to receive this kind of an item, because of going through. I mean, we're seeing the people who've gone through intensive cardiac care and have had major open heart surgeries, etc. But they're the ones who I wish we could have reached them before they ever got a pillow.
Yes. And we're working on it. We're going to keep working on it. So, but yes, thank you for showing that pillow, and thank you guys for staying on a few extra minutes. And we hope you have a wonderful day. Bye, everyone.